Okay, Parashat Bo. This shiur is for the merit of Rachel Chaya Bat Sarah. Parashat Bo, we try to take maybe a little different angle this week or this year. Maybe we'll see what we could come up with. So Bnei Israel lived in Mitzrayim, and they tried to keep their own, separated individual identity. And now it's just as they're about to leave, comes the Torah and he uses a word twice that he usually does not use, and the word is saf. And saf means the doorpost on the bottom. We'll see what it is, but in other words, it kind of gives us a warning to guard the inside, to guard your self-identity. However, in that, don't forget to learn from others as well. This is a very delicate act, and you need to be very careful not to get swollen by one or the other. So all of a sudden, just as the whole ordeal is evolving and is happening, all of a sudden there is the commandment or the call, Vaikra Moshe lekol ziknei Israel. Moshe calls all the elders, all the leaders, all the elders, and he calls upon them and he says, Mishchu ukchu lachem tzon lemishpachotechem v'shachatu et hapasach. Everybody get a sheep or lamb, and then slaughter it, each one for its family. And he says, ulekachtem agudat ezov, and you took a bundle of hyssop, utvaltem badam asher basaf, and you're going to dip it in the blood that is in the doorpost. Vehigatem el mashkof ve'el shtei mezuzot, and you reach the top and the two sides, and you touch it with the dam asher basaf, and again, and you touch it from the blood that's in the post. If that doesn't work, it's fine. V'atem lo titzu ish mipetach beito ad boker, and you are not going to leave the house, outside the house, until the morning. So the question is, of course, why does it say saf? I mean, we already know that the blood is there at the door. And Hadam asher basaf, that repetition causes us, hopefully, to pay attention or to say, hey, 1 second, why is he repeating this again? Of course, we are talking about, and it's clear to us that the doorstep is a place that there is some kind of empty space there, or some kind of a vessel in which we gather the blood. Otherwise, I mean, they don't shecht it and they put the blood on the floor. And Rashi writes, Asher basaf, which is in the doorpost, bakli, kmo sepot hakesef, in a vessel. There's a vessel. And also for the repetition, Rashi also pays attention, and then he says, based on what Chachamim says, min hadam asher basaf, from the blood that is at the door. Lama chazar v'shanao, why did it go back and repeat this statement, the blood that is on the doorpost? Meshetieh kol netina v'netina min hadam asher basaf al kol haga'at tvila, to teach us that every time you touch the post, right, or the top, you have to dip, make the mark, dip, make a mark, dip, make a mark. Not just like one and then 1, 2, 3. That's why he learns. But maybe, just maybe, there is a way to go a little bit different than what Rashi or the path that Rashi has taken. So first of all, we need to again clarify that the word or the item saf is not the vessel. Saf is not the vessel, but rather the lower part, the door seal on the bottom. The step on the bottom. And we could learn so from many places in Tanakh, when he talks about Adoniah, the son of David, he gets up in the morning, Vayiftach deratot habayit, and he opened the doors, Vayetze vayelech ledarko, and he went to his way, Ve'inei ha'isha pilakshon ofelet, petach habayit vayada al asaf, and his concubine falls with the hands on the doorstep, kind of prevent them to go, and some other places it says over there. So that repetition really brings our attention to that special place, the doorstep, the door seal. And there is something very important in that. Something so important that the Torah had to repeat it twice just before we're about to leave Egypt. Now, we're doing those series of lectures regarding the mystical aspects of Shabbat and Tchum and domains and so on and so forth. And we had mentioned that the house represents the pnimiyut, internal, and the outside is external. Okay? Whether it's or pnimi, internal light, external light, and so on and so forth. And that envelope that we call a house really does few things for us. Protects its inhabitants and separates them from the world outside. Bnei Israel, Am Yisrael, represents the house. That's why Hashem chose us as the nation in which He's going to dwell in a particular place called Israel, the land of Israel, in a particular place called Jerusalem. Not Mecca or Medina, in Jerusalem. Not Paris either. And that the Jews separated by also placing the blood, separated between them and the Egyptians, which they were. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu already separated between Am Yisrael and the Egyptians many ways. Every makkah that happened to the Egyptians. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not allow this to happen to Bnei Israel. However, in Makat Bechorot, it's a little bit different. In Makat Bechorot, when the firstborn died, it's just a job different. Why? Because we need to ourselves create the separation in order for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to skip our houses from that plague that happened. And so is in our lives. We have to make the Havdalah. We need to make that separation ourselves and not just settle down for whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu had already separated us. And that will be, for example, the rabbinical decrees like Pat Israel, eating Jewish bread, and that doesn't mean rye bread. Pat Israel, Bishulei Goyim, eating food that was cooked by a Gentile, and how to eat it, and what to do to it, and so on and so forth. But inside the house also, there are special areas, special places that there is an interaction between the outside and the inside. And that is the door, for example, your doors or windows. These are the places that are in between zones, between that. In Aramaic, that area, that place that we call the saf, the pedestal, the door stool, the doorstep, it's called iskupah. Iskupah is a special area. And what's so special about that saf? That it is both inside and outside. And you know that the Gemara always, almost like, always deals with those in-between areas. Almost in like an obsessed manner, if we're allowed to say that. And the Tumtum, the Androgynous, and Chatzi Eved, and Chatzi Ben Chorim, those in-between things, we usually neglect them. However, our success or failure will be dependent on the attention that we put into this twilight zone of life, or to this case, areas. And it's not day and it's not night. And that place in the door, when you put in, usually we put like a little piece of metal, right? That is a most unique, special, and sometimes even dangerous place. Because it's both inside and outside. By the way, we put the mezuzah there, and maybe we'll understand later why dafka the mezuzah in the din, Shem Shin Dalet Yud, appears like this on the outside. And I'm going to explain to you something. In many cultures all over the world, they put great emphasis to those entranceways. I mean, of course, I'm sure everybody watch here High Chaparral. You watch the High Chaparral? No, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? No. Well, it's a Western TV series from the late 60s, early 70s. So if you watch the High Chaparral, you know that they have the fence all around, right? The Ponderosa fence. And then there is a gate. That you always have to have this gate, and with these two poles like this. When I was in New Mexico, I saw some amazing ones like this. They were gigantic. In Japan, there is every city or town or village or sacred place had the Tori. Tori, Tori, is a special gate that they have. And carries with it great significance. In, for example, the Japanese culture will be the area, the symbolism of going between the physical to the metaphysical. That doorstep. Lehavdil also by us, the doorstep is very, very special. And there is a story of Rav Nachman Mibreslev, among many stories that he had, that talks about this guest. And that guest comes to a house, and the host feels that he could learn some things from the guest that just came over. So, after he serves him and treats him, he promised him that he's going to come back and he's going to teach him. But right now he's got to go. He can't stay any longer. Thank you for the hospitality, but I got to be on my way. So Baal Habayit said, this is also I need to learn from you. I need to learn from you that as well. And what I need to learn is how much should I escort you to, there's halakha, by the way. There's halakha when a guest comes to your house, how much you have to walk with your guest. So he said to him, until after the door. So the host says, one second, I'm going to go with him. I'm going to go outside with this guy. Because if I'm, right now I'm with him, with the people, and there are people in the house, and if I'm going to go out with him, I'm going to be alone. And I don't know who this guy is. I mean, they didn't live on Park Avenue, but, I don't know who this guy is. So he says to the guest, he says, I'm very afraid to go out with you alone. That opening is a very scary place. I'm not so. It has to do with the outside, and outside there's no protection as inside. I don't know what you're going to do to me outside. So finally he overcomes his fear, and he goes with the guest, and they walk out of the door. Immediately, the guest grabbed him, and he starts flying with him. In other words, starts running with him or doing something with him. And the guy was very, very cold. So he took a garment and he put it on him, and he said to him, put this garment on you and you're going to feel better. And you're going to have enough to eat, and you have enough to drink, and you're going to sit down again in your house. And he went with him again. As they're doing so, he looked around, he turned around, and he's in his house. And he doesn't believe himself that in his house. And then he turned his head again, and he's outside, right? He turns his head again, and he's inside the house, and he's eating and talking to others. And he's turning himself again, and he's outside in the street, in the opening over there. And he gets very, very confused. And in his, Rav Nachman Bresler was a very interesting fellow, but in his so-called imaginary world with demons and all this stuff like this, he's trying to give us a tremendous lesson, Rav Nachman. When you are in the doorway, you're both in the same time, inside and outside. In the same time, you're inside and outside. So when the Balabai, the host, overcame his fears and he went outside, he went to the door, he was outside. And sometimes we're inside, and only a fraction of the outside come to us. Sometimes if you don't have your door seal appropriately, you get little drafts. Could be freezing outside, but you do get drafts, right? So a little bit of the outside comes to you as well. Or that matter could be light. Even though the light is very, very dim and very not as strong, but still it would able to penetrate. And that penetration of if you have draft at your door, you'll be surprised. It's not going to be blowing. You're not going to blow your hair and like you're riding a Harley somewhere in the desert, somewhere on the desert highway. You ride a Harley Davidson, your hair is flowing back. No, that's not going to happen. It's a song by Neil Young, by the way, very nice song. Tremendous album I recommend you to listen to. It's called Harvest Moon, just in case you want to know. But this little blow of air, that little draft, can cool up your whole entire house to the point it's going to be really uncomfortable. Next to the door, you're going to walk barefoot, it's going to be cold. And it's going to cool the whole entire house. And how does it enter? Not to brick doors opening, the door is open and swinging. Through the little cracks, where? At the saf, at the door seal, at the bottom of the door. And so is also the window. A window is the same thing. A window will do to you the same thing. And, you should know that the doors and windows are almost a necessity for a person to exist. Because if I'm going to put you in a house with no windows, it's terrible. When they build this place here, there's no windows here. We're in the basement, there's no windows. Rabbi Ben Chaim says, I'm not coming in until you're going to open a window here for me. You don't see the view, but there's a window. It's something very, very important. I never understood why was he saying that, but I think I'm starting to understand on a different level why he wanted that. And it was very important to have windows and to have doors. So in the olden days, right, they used to build the doors. The doors will be nice, and the doors will be strong, but not too big and not too small. Not too big because it's very inconvenient and not practical, and not too small so you can have people coming in and going to your house, in quite ease and comfort. Windows were very low. The windows were low so you could sit inside the house, especially in like my type of house where I live. It's a Queen Anne, it's a type of architecture. The windows are really low. So I can sit in my living room and actually look outside. That's not a problem. And it really is interesting and fascinating how much things have changed. You could really learn a lot about society, or the society that you live in, or society that you visit, if you're going to pay attention to the architecture and the positioning and size of windows and doors. A lot. In the old days, people used to open the doors were open, people used to sit outside, and it was quite different than it is today. Today, windows are smaller, or in such height that you can't really comfortably look outside, and it says something about it. It says something about our society. If you're going to, I think, for my very uneducated opinion, I think that there is the best example is, maybe if you can come up with as a reflection for society, is to look at Japan. Houses in Japan, the way they used to be, where you could really open it, the doors are all open, sliding open. And houses how in Japan are today, where sometimes if you go to a capsule hotel, there's no windows in the capsule hotel. They're very small, no windows. It's crazy. So a person that you should know that therefore a person that, even if a person lives all alone, he's all by himself, even if he, deliberately wants this, sometimes he wants some interaction with people. So a person that wants to know what's going on with the weather outside, or what time of the day it is. I told you I could more or less tell what time it is when I wake up before I look at my watch, by looking at the window next to my bed. I could really tell what time is it. I usually off, if I'm not, I said within 5 minutes I'm on the time. Within 10 minutes it's not bad. I usually not off by 10 minutes. It's within 10 minutes. It's just a matter. But I could not do this because I look outside. It's not only the strength of this, but the quality of the light. So a person like this wants to know how things are. You can learn about your economy by looking at the window. How people are dressed, what they're doing, where they're walking, and so on and so forth. What they're doing outside. If they're sitting down, in the corner of the street and getting all drunk, economy is pretty bad. But everybody is working. Economy is probably good. There's not a lot of unemployment and so on and so forth, right? Therefore, you want to say something to, or someone to lean on. A person like this is not going to make it if he's not going to have a window that looks to the street. Because if you look to the street, slowly, by looking and looking, right? Eventually you're going to see people, you're going to meet people, and you're going to be interacting with people. But a person that is in solitary confinement, that's why it's probably one of the worst punishment out there, to be in solitary confinement. You have no windows, you don't know what day it is, and nobody comes to visit you. It's a horrible punishment. You're going to lose your mind. If you're going to be removed from any kind, if you think, I can go to solitary confinement, I can be there for a month, nothing will happen, you're wrong. After 3 days, you're going to be, I don't know what, going out of your mind. It doesn't make a difference how strong you think you are, you're not. We need that interaction. So, for the Egyptian people, is something very clear. And we need to remember this. There's only one straight line that connects human interaction or to that of the national interaction. But in Am Yisrael, as a Jew, there always needs to be an ongoing thinking process about how those two things interact between the individual and the society. You always have to pay attention. And it is very, very difficult to do so. And it's an absolute necessity to maintain this balance all the time. When Am Yisrael was about to become a nation, he started, to deal with this problem. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us, and we know it right away because he told us, hey, you're going to separate. What, you think God needs to have the blood on the door in order to know which is a Jewish house, which is not a Jewish house? But it is an indication for us that we have to start the process of self-identity as a nation. Self-identity as a nation. And as soon as we did that, the first commandment that we got was Kiddush HaChodesh, count your own time. As a Jewish person, we all got used to it and we're all guilty in that matter. But what does it tell us that we're using somebody else's time count? What does it has to do with me that today is January 30th, 2020? What does it tell me? What does it have to do with me? There's nothing to do with me. But if I'm going to ask you exactly, because I know I already start thinking already, because he knows where I'm going with this. But if I ask you if you know today, what's today's Hebrew date, how many of you will be able to tell me,
5th of Shvat.
Tzaddik Katamar Ifrach. See? So 3 out of whatever you guys are here. And if I'll ask you tomorrow or in 2 weeks from now, you'll know. You have it on you set your clock. Very good.
It's important to me.
It's important to you. You're right. Ask everybody else how much, if anybody else set the date on the telephones to that. You did also? It's a yofi. Surprise. Okay, how about the rest of you?
Someone different.
And now you're doing this all the time? Or now you just did it? All right, very good. See, at least we achieved something from this talk.
My money, man.
My zmanim that don't work like this. It has to be all the time. Anyway, so now, how do we balance those things? And those aspects apply to us as well. For example, in Israel, there was a big turmoil about having refugees over there and illegal, people that penetrated to the country. And how do we balance between that and, let's say, foreign workers that come to Israel and work there, or even more so, how do we deal with conversion? Appropriate to create an appropriate system of conversion. Of course, we find that in the commandment for Mitzvat Pesach, in our parasha, and the pasuk says like this: "V'chi yagur itcha ger v'asa Pesach leHashem." Himol lo kol zachar. If now, whether it's a ger or ger toshav, a convert or a resident alien, right? The first thing you have to do, give him a brit milah. Ve'az, and after he did the brit milah, yikrav la'asoto v'aya ke'ezrach haaretz, and then he could bring the sacrifice and could be just like anybody else. And that is a very important thing for us. Why? Because kager, ka'ezrach, mishpat echad yeh lachem. In your country, you're not going to say, well, I am a Jewish resident of the Jewish state, therefore I have more privileges than somebody else who is not Jewish. Mishpat echad yeh lachem. It's going to be the same thing. So you see, in one hand, he needs to do the ger, the resident alien needs to do a brit milah, otherwise he cannot. But then on the other hand, you're both equal. You have the same laws. It's a certain balance that you have to keep. Now, that generosity of allowing people to come and live with you, it says v'chi yagur itcha, and he would live with you. So you know that you have to allow people to live with you. From this point and on, there is a certain limitation on this process or the idea that we have in terms of ideals and national ideals and social ideals. To compare with that, in terms of the laws, we are all the same. There's no contradiction between seeing and recognizing the other, right? And his needs and providing with them, to putting a certain barricades and blocking certain avenues or demanding that he's going to be a complete citizen just like you and me, to the point that we don't know anymore who is a Jew and who is not a Jew. So it's a very delicate balance to work. We can't close the country and says nobody in, refugees or people that need help. But how do we maintain this balance to make sure that it's a Jewish state? So it is a tremendous challenge. And what does it have to do with us? It has to do with us. How do we live, to reverse this, how do we live in a country and yet maintain our Jewish identity without getting swallowed by the society outside and still being an interactive part of society, contributing? It's a very delicate dance. So, Bnei Israel that lived in Mitzrayim, as we said before, are able to maintain that. Are very able to maintain that. And they were able to arrange the country, as you know, by Yosef. Yosef was setting down, he set the laws of taxation and so on and so forth. But what kept them like this is they were involved, but they had to maintain the Jewish identity. And that is something that I see that most of us fail in our daily routines, which brings me to a great concern of what will happen to our children. Because if we are weakening our Jewish identity slowly, every generation gets less and less and less. And what would our children do? What would our grandchildren do? I remember one time I was walking with Rabbi Ben Chaim, and we were talking. So he said to me, listen, we were talking about something. And he said to me, listen, I know that you are religious. I know I am religious. And that's not what we have to worry about. But we really have to worry about what's going to happen with our grandchildren. How what we are doing going to affect our grandchildren, that our grandchildren will be Jewish or maintain a Jewish identity. And that is something very, 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 very important. And we all have to pay attention to that. For the Egyptian, it was very simple. The Egyptians were very simple. Vayasimu lo lo levado velahem levadam. They put to Yosef food alone, and to the, together with his brothers, and to the Egyptian, האוכלים איתו לבדם. They ate alone. Why? כי לא יאכלו המצרים לאכול את העברים לחם כי תועבה היא למצרים. It's a disgusting thing for Egyptians to eat together with non-Egyptians. But right before they're leaving us, the Torah is telling us about awareness. And you have to learn from the people. You have to be careful from the people, from your society, but you have to learn from them, because after all, you lived within the society. If you will be able to do that, אחר כך תצאו ברכוש גדול. You're going to have great. You're going to have great possessions. Why? עשירים, richer, because you're able to be like a funnel to take something from the society, from other nations, without losing your identity. And now you're gaining. You want an example for that? You think it's impossible? I'll give you an example. One of the greatest eras in Jewish history was what we call the golden age of Jewish era in Spain. What was so unique about this time in Spain? That most of the Rishonim were from that part of the world. Unbelievable Torah came from that part of the world, because they were able to integrate with society without losing their Jewish identity. There were tax collectors, there were ministers, there were bankers, there were whatever. They integrated, and yet it didn't bother them to become a Jew. Why? Because they knew what they need to do very, very carefully. There was no such thing as cutting loopholes or making loopholes or cutting shortcuts in this thing. There was no, Rabbi, why do I have to keep Chalav Israel? I have Chalav non-Israel. Rabbi, why do I have to do this? No, we are Jews and we do that. That fact that they said we are Jews and we did it allowed them to develop internal strength. Remember, internal strength to deal with the external forces that come out and to be able to create a balance. Guarding your doors, putting the din, Shin Daled Yud, represent din, Gvurot. You have to be Gibor. Gvura is din. When you put the mezuzah on your door, you need Gvura to protect you from the outside and from whatever is inside. That's why every Jewish door needs to do so. Yes, technically, the main door is the main important thing. But however, every door to represent that, because even in your own house, there are parts or segments of your house that needs greater guarding. That doorstep, that inner zone between outside and inside, the places that most of us fail. We don't fail if I'm going to tell you, eat a piece of pork. You're not going to eat a piece of pork because it's clear to you that you cannot eat. But if you are not internally strong and there is something that there is a question in it, you will try to find a way, if it's a little inconvenient for you, why you could eat it. There were Chachamim who would not eat or would not touch meat from an animal that was a question to it. It needs to be clear. Can I or I cannot? Those areas are very dangerous. And we try to always create a certain barrier. On Shabbat, it comes even to more. We have the Shabbat, the city, which represent a group of people living together. That's like an envelope. After that, there is 2,000 amot that I can walk, and after that, I cannot walk anymore on Shabbat. Why? Because if I live in a village, my village is like my house. That's the inside reflecting. The outside will be the area, the in-between area, that it's like the quasi-zone. That's the doorway, because after 2,000 amah, there is no protection anymore. So within the 2,000 amah, you can walk. After that, it's already dangerous. When you go outside and you're not strong inside, it's going to be dangerous. You're going to be confused. You don't know anymore what you are. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you're doing. And when you get to the stage, you fail. You cannot go out of Mitzrayim, the place of darkness, of spiritual darkness, without knowing exactly who you are and what you are and why you're doing the things you're doing. You are not going to make it. That experiment would fail before it even started. That's why all the tests that they did, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tested Am Yisrael, was not to test Am Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows exactly what are we capable or not capable of doing. Those tests were for us to show us that we have the emunah and we have the ability to become a nation. We are able to separate between us and the nations outside. Children of Abraham and later on Am Yisrael were separated by the Brit Milah. And those who were separated by the Brit Milah from Am Yisrael going to be the most humane people in humankind. I have to give it to you. It's true that by nature they're a little opposite from the rest of the world. But even so, it never stops the Jew, even though he's different, even though he lives and acts and thinks and breathes different, never stops a Jew from completing a noble human cause, whether it's sending, helping some people in Rhodesia, in Zimbabwe, in whatever, or sending help and aid, or opening hospitals and so on and so forth. It never stops a Jew. Even though we're different, it doesn't stop the Jew. And it is very, very important to mention somebody, when you meet somebody on the doorway, when somebody comes. When somebody comes to your house, what do you tell this person? What do you tell them? Yeah, what do you want? What are you doing here? How can I help you? That's not what a Jewish way. A Jewish way is, what do we say? Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem. How beautiful it is when you're coming to a shul and you don't know anybody, and somebody comes and says to you, Shalom Aleichem, welcome, how are you? Levi, Kohen, Levi, Israel. You need to get married, you have a shidduch. But the words, those magical words, Shalom Aleichem, did you ever think about what it means? When we say Shalom Aleichem, we says that the Shalom is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one of the names of God. And Shalom comes from Lishon Shlemut, complete, harmonious. So we says, Shalom Aleichem, I'm blessing the person. I'm blessing him. Shalom Aleichem is going to be upon you. There's going to be harmony upon you. And there's going to be harmony between us. Shalom Aleichem. I'm inside the house. I'm blessing you and welcome you in by the name of God. That Be'ezrat Hashem, we should have the harmony, the protection of God, not only on me inside the house, but also on you who's coming into the house. And it's a greeting. You're coming to me with empty, and I'm greeting you with Hashem's name, with God's name. And you're coming to my house through that, because it's not natural to let people in. So now you understand how important it is to have this mitzvah of achnasat orchim, of letting guests inside your house, inviting people into your house, learning to care. There are plenty of people who don't have a place to eat on Shabbat, or they eat alone on Shabbat. And you should not happen like this. You should invite them and open your house and open your heart and learn how to create this. Nothing will happen. Learn how to create your own strength, your own castle, which is called your house. Now, Rav Hirsch writes in Parashat Bereshit, Yudchet, it says, if you want to know a secret, he says like this, Ki leshem kach hemayu le'am badad ishkon. In order to fulfill a certain mission, that's why the Jews have to be alone. Kedei letapeach bekirbam, in order to harbor and develop within themselves et ha'enoshiyut ha'teora, this pure humanity, la'azor, to help, gam lemi she'eino kamocha, to help even the one who is not like you. And that, when we do it like this, we are able to crown ourselves with the name human being. So when somebody says, well, you're not Jewish, I'm sorry, I'm not going to help you, it's the most horrible way to actually carry the Hashem's name. Maybe you're not even worthy to be called a Jew, because Jews don't do that. We help everyone, anyone, wherever they are. That's a Jewish way. Hatzalah, when they drive the ambulances on Shabbat, by Jewish people, they don't say, excuse me, what's your mother's name? Oh, she's Jewish, fine, I'll be right there. You're not Jewish, I'm not. We don't do that on Shabbat, the holiest day. If a Gentile calls, we go help. That's what it means to be human. You don't open the doors or help out or skip the lines for people who are like you, whether it's your religion, whether it's your nationality, or your cultural group. If you do so, you are taken away for what it does mean to be a Jew. When you say, I'm going to help only my people, I'm going to ask you, who is your people? Who is your people? Once somebody told me, he told his father, help our people. I said, who's our people? So he said, Hasidim. His father said to him, well, the Litvaks are not a people. So the Litvak says, them Hasidim. The Hasidim say, them Litvak. They all say, the modern Orthodox. Modern Orthodox say, them Sfardim. Sfardim says, everybody. And the Goyim says, Jews, not Jews. In other words, that's what they used to say. When the Jew is not willing to do Kiddush, the Goy does Havdalah. We need to live our ways as a nation. What represents us as a nation, our ability and obligation to do Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify God's name. When you are a part of everybody else, you lost your identity. We must maintain this identity. When we do so, when we do that stuff, we are able to be called a nation. If we want to know why we're in Galut, according to some opinions, we're in Galut to bring the light of God, not only because of our punishments, but our job is to bring the light of God to the darkest of all places. And this is a job that each and every one of us was given. And therefore you need to ask yourself, do you see yourself as a Jewish person? Do you see yourself as a part of the Jewish nation? Are you willing to do what it takes? Because if not, there's quite of a problem among Am Israel. Rabotai, it's time to step up the game. To be strong inside. That's why we wear talit katan for or pnimi, for internal light, and talit gadol for external light. We need to do the tikkun of both of them. We need to strengthen our houses, and we need to strengthen ourselves when we go out, and we have to try to be very careful to bring God's name to those in-between areas that we usually fall in between. It doesn't say it's not allowed, but it doesn't say it's okay. So, I might as well just do it. Stay away from questions like this, from iffy situations. Run away from. Clarity, day and night. Only when it's clear to you, day and night, you could do the job you need to do. When you're not quite sure, it's the most dangerous. Most of the accidents happen at the time between day and night. Most of the accidents. And Chachamim told us to be very careful, especially for that. And as you can see on Shabbat, we remove, except in the Shabbat, at least 18 minutes before that time. Before sunset. Because during sunset, until Tzet HaKochavim, that's the in-between time. So you know what? I'm going to move out. That's exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do. That's the manifestation of Makat Bechorot. I know exactly where Shabbat is. But I'm asking you as Jews to do this painting of the doorstep and therefore lighting it early. Let's start to do it. Let's bring the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the darkest of those places. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should be redeemed quickly and safely to Eretz Yisrael. Amen.
Amen.